Need for Speed is one of the most prolific and long-running racing game franchises of all time, and another entry in the series is confirmed to be in development, releasing late this year or early next year. However, after reaching its peak during the 2000s, the last decade has brought plummeting popularity, the ascendance of powerful competitors, and corporate shakeups to the series, putting its continued existence in doubt. The commercial failure of former developer Ghost Games and the recent success of competing games in the racing genre has everyone from casual players to EA executives asking the same question: why have a Need for Speed? The answer to this question not only determines the future of the franchise, but may also direct the core gameplay design philosophy of the next game. To find this answer, we have to find where Need for Speed fits in the racing genre, and what it must do to continue to fill a unique niche for years to come. The racing genre has long been divided into two categories: simulation and arcade. Simulation games have mostly stuck to the track, focusing on realistic, skillful driving in a competitive motorsport atmosphere. Arcade racers, on the other hand, have taken an open-world approach, with much greater emphasis on exploration and roaming cruises. Although excellent simulation games like Gran Turismo and F1 have earned their fair share of players, arcade racers such as Need for Speed and Forza Horizon have generally had a much broader appeal and have achieved the most popularity in recent years. For illustration, Forza Horizon 4 sold 10 million copies and was the single highest-selling Xbox One game by number of units. Forza Horizon 5, released in November 2021, sold 10 million copies in just 1 month and surpassed 15 million players by January. With games like Underground 2 and Most Wanted, Need for Speed has reached heights like these before, but its status as the quintessential arcade racer has been eroding away for years now. Horizon's success may make it easy to come to the conclusion that Need for Speed, in order to regain its popularity, should simply copy and emulate what makes Horizon great. This conclusion, however, is mistaken. If people want a game like Forza Horizon, they'll just go play Forza Horizon. Need for Speed has had a difficult decade as a franchise for a number of reasons, but I think the core issue of the series is that it forgot what kind of arcade racer it was. The Horizonification of everything in this category of racing game has blurred Need for Speed's identity as its own subgenre unto itself. I'm going to talk about what that identity should be, and how the next era of Need for Speed games can learn from it to get back on track. Need for Speed is about illegal street racing. That is the core identity of the Need for Speed subgenre, its raison d'etre, and the niche in which future Need for Speed games must reside if the series is to survive. This is not at all to say that Need for Speed has always been about illegal street racing, or even that it must only be about illegal street racing. But the main experience, the themes, atmosphere, world, and gameplay must revolve around the experience of racing on open roads against shady competitors for money and for infamy, with the threat of the law always lurking. This has to be the focus of future Need for Speeds because it is the only thing that no other arcade racer has mastered. There's nothing wrong with the thrill-seeking style of the crew or the carefree lightheartedness of the Horizon festivals, except that these have already been done. Need for Speed cannot afford to be a half-hearted knockoff of other racing games, so it has no choice but to do what only Need for Speed has done well: illegal street racing. Asymmetric battles against racers and cops, an underground atmosphere, and an open world that makes every encounter unique are what Need for Speed does best. An identity built around illegal street racing should affect every aspect of the next Need for Speed game, but some are more important than others. To illustrate, let's discuss how this identity determines the design of the atmosphere, the cops, and the open world. The atmosphere of a game is the tone and mood created by every scene. For example, Need for Speed 2015 created a somber, gritty atmosphere by using predominantly darker colors, harsh neon lights, and a nighttime-only setting. Overall, this game did a pretty good job creating an atmosphere appropriate for a game about illegal street racing, punctured only by the incredibly awkward and tone-deaf cutscenes. Future Need for Speeds should mostly avoid bright pastel colors, upbeat beach music, and soft natural lighting in favor of a darker palette and generally lower light levels. Another nighttime-only setting would probably be a mistake, but daytime light levels should be more like dawn or dusk rather than high noon. This will preserve a variety of lighting for players to show off their customized cars, while also creating a mood more appropriate for competition that takes place outside the confines of the law. Secondly, an identity focused on illegal street racing necessitates a strong and formidable police presence. Need for Speed is one of the precious few franchises to really perfect the cat-and-mouse asymmetrical chases, and it needs to lean on this strength heavily to compete with other racing games that lack this experience. While this is not a video about how cops should work in Need for Speed, that's for another time, a few fundamental points are important to include. First, cops cannot be an afterthought or a side activity like in 2015 or Payback. The threat of the law does not have to be as ever-present as in Rivals, but it should be a possibility whenever illegal activity is occurring, and encounters with the police should be necessary to progress through the game. Second, cops must pose a real threat, not an inconvenience. As great as pursuits were in Rivals, players could still only lose what they had gained during that driving session. Any banked speed points were completely secure. Similarly, in Heat, players could only lose up to $50,000 if busted, which could be earned back with just a single daytime race. Simply put, the stakes need to be higher. While higher fines for pursuits could be a good start, even better features would be persistent heat levels for cars involved in chases, and impound strikes that threaten players with the loss of their vehicle if they're busted too many times. Finally, an open world designed for street racing and pursuits is fundamentally different from one designed for sanctioned closed-course races and friendly cruises. Future Need for Speed maps need to focus less on long stretches of highway with wide curves designed for cruising at high speeds, and more on tight urban spaces with narrow alleys and sharp corners, as well as winding canyons and cliffside routes. These environments are much more suited for sprint races and cop chases, and although it is important for a map to have a variety that still includes all of these elements, Need for Speed needs a uniquely urban setting to fit its identity. Additionally, Heat's focus on off-roading and allowing players to drive anywhere off the beaten path should be scaled back, as it ruined the flow of police pursuits by infinitely expanding the possible avenues of escape and lowering the risk of damaging your car with poor driving. While the off-road races were fun and good, the entire map should not be built around this one style of racing. These are just a few examples of how the future of Need for Speed should look if the franchise embraces its identity of illegal street racing. Any attempt to emulate the style of Forza Horizon or other arcade racers will leave NFS destined to be a B-tier racing game at best, leaving it with no other option than to double down on what it has always done best. There is an audience that craves the adrenaline of a pursuit, the gritty competition of a street race, and the thrill of exploring every side street and back alley of an urban playground. Need for Speed can deliver this experience, and in order to survive, it will have to.